here with one of today's inductees, Dr. Gordon Ressler. I had the distinct privilege of sitting next to Gordon in Mr. J.C. Rogers' calculus class during my senior year. I'd already been accepted into the college of my choice, and so I told Mr. Rogers, who I had the trick the previous year, that I wanted to take calculus just to see what it was all about. Well, after the first marking period, it was clear that calculus was taking me instead. So Mr. Rogers reassigned my seat in between Gordon Ressler and Lloyd Powell, two of the brightest math students in the class, and instructed them to help me get a passing grade. Well, enough about me. Let's fast forward 40-some years. Another mutual teacher, Mr. George Pease, who taught POTC, you all know, Problems of the 20th Century, was inspired to nominate Dr. Gordon Ressler to the AHS Wall of Fame for his accomplishments in science and engineering. He'd attended our 40th reunion and reconnected with some of us. Mr. Pease was so looking forward to being here, to introducing Dr. Ressler himself, but he and his lovely wife Jane are snowbirds and they had to fly south for the winter just a bit early this year. Mr. Pease called me a few weeks ago and asked if I'd fill in. He was so disappointed that he couldn't be here himself, but he expressed confidence, "Mr. Pease, you're here." Well, yes, Jackie, modern technology, you know. And you look exactly like you did in 1971. That's amazing. Well, I try to take care of myself. And you're in two places at once. Well, while you're here, why don't you say a few words? I thought you'd never ask. Over the course of my 27 years teaching social studies at Annapolis Senior High School from 1976 to 1993, I had the rewarding experience of teaching many fine students. The class of 1971 stands out in my memory as one of the top classes which I taught. Today's inductee to the AHS Wall of Fame, Dr. Gordon Ressler, represents that class and makes his classmates proud with his academic professional achievements. I'm sure Jackie will fill you in on Gordon's outstanding career in science and engineering. Congratulations, Gordon. Thanks for your service to our country, and may you continue to be an inspiration to those who follow in your path. I really have to go now. At my age, it's hard to be in two places at once. So long, everyone. Bye, Mr. Pease.
So much for the laws of physics.
I hope somebody videoed that so we can post it on.
Got it, Jack. Let's go.
Yeah.
When I looked over Gordon's bio for the first time, the opening line to the song Indescribable by Chris Thompson came to mind. From the highest of heights to the depths of the sea. Gordon's career has indeed spanned the highest of heights. Projects involving space technology to the depths of the sea. 11 years as a submariner in the U.S. Navy. Gordon was born at the Naval Academy Hospital. His dad was teaching marine engineering at the academy during that time. He grew up on the Severn River. He attended West Annapolis Elementary School, where his mother had been a teacher. And he went to Annapolis Junior High, Severn School, and graduated from Annapolis High in '71. Only for 1 year was his education outside of Annapolis. He spent 8th grade in Hawaii at Punaapu School. Did I get that right? The school that President Obama attended. But they didn't cross paths due to a bit of an age difference. Gordon was one of 3 valedictorians in our class, and he was also one of 7 young men from that class that attended the U.S. Naval Academy. There, Gordon studied physics, graduated 6th in his class, and then served for 11 years aboard nuclear submarines. During this time, his daughter Hope and son Ben were born. Is with us today. In 1986, Gordon left active service in the Navy and resumed his studies in physics, now at MIT, where he received his PhD in 1992. He conducted postdoctoral research at the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington for 2 years. At MIT and NRL, he made 3 discoveries in the field of solid-state physics concerning some exotic behavior of electrons and metals. In Gordon's words, these discoveries are very hard to explain and have no practical application. But he regards them as gifts from God, who was allowing him to view very small pieces of the divine design of the universe. Next, Gordon worked for 3 years at the U.S. Department of Energy headquarters. He helped create a nuclear safety program for federal employees. He also started and managed a research program for cleaning up many of our nation's most challenging environmental problems. For the next 5 years, Gordon worked at a private company providing technical assistance to DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. He contributed to advances in communication, space, and naval systems, as well as robots. He became the chief scientist of the company's DARPA support branch. Shortly after 9/11, Gordon asked to become a program manager at DARPA. While at DARPA, he conceived the idea of a space tow truck. It's designed to move satellites between different orbits to save money, extend operating times, and cut down on space debris, as well as developing a huge radar for collecting the data on satellites in distant orbits around the Earth. Who knew when we were sitting in calculus class? For his service at DARPA, Gordon was given the Exceptional Public Service Award by the Office of the Secretary of Defense. After 4 exhausting years at DARPA, Gordon's wife, Stacia, who is also here, gave him the year off. During that time, Gordon helped to found the Quaker High School in Alexandria, Virginia. As well as organizing its board of trustees, he was its first unpaid physics teacher. The school started with only 6 students, all of whom were in Gordon's physics class. Several of those students are still friended to Gordon on Facebook. Going back to work, Gordon next joined the Ocean Sciences Division of Science Applications International Corporation. He worked on diving systems, underwater sound, and continued his interest in robotic boats. His team was able to show how a robotic boat can be taught to steer safely in high seas. He also invented a new kind of sound source for underwater use. At this point, Gordon's wife Stacia wished to return to her native California. So he accepted a position at the Informational Science Institute of the University of Southern California in Los Angeles. He worked on a large smart grid demonstration with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. He also studied the generation of electricity using ocean waves. He taught a course in solar building design, which the students really enjoyed because they actually got to build things. From California, Gordon again followed Stacia, this time to Australia, where her company, Hewlett-Packard, assigned her for a year. They had a great time in Sydney and traveled to many places in Asia. While there, Gordon worked at the University of New South Wales. He designed a satellite to measure the water in Australia's soils. Besides advising several students on their undergraduate thesis projects, he appeared on Australian television several times. He was interviewed about mining asteroids and building things in space. And now, after 40 years, Gordon has returned to Annapolis. He and Stacia live in the same house where Gordon grew up, a stone's throw from the Severn. Gordon is working to commercialize one of his inventions, an energy storage system that uses abandoned oil wells. He is also providing technical assistance to DARPA on one of their space programs. He credits his mom, the school teacher, and his dad, the engineer, for giving him a solid foundation for success in math and science. Gordon knows the Lord has a plan for him. He has truly investigated the highest of heights and the depths of the seas. He is wondering what the one who placed the stars in the sky and knows them by name has in store for him next. We're all proud of you, Gordon. You deserve this honor and recognition.
I'm not like as accomplished a speaker as Mr. Elston, but I do have some things to say. I had to write it down. Thank you, Jackie Andrews Grace, classmate, friend, and fellow Christian, for that very nice introduction. Thank you, Ms. Chittum and Mr. Elston and the committee at Annapolis High School for this honor. And thank all my classmates for attending. There are at least half a dozen here today. Thanks especially to my wife, Stacia, and my children, Hope and Ben. They had to put up with the absent-mindedness and the disorganization. I really am a stereotypical scientist. They love to talk to me about science, and those are some very precious moments, memories for me. I do also want to thank Mr. George Pease, who was a longtime teacher at this school, who took the initiative to nominate me for this award. I'm very grateful for his sponsorship and for his friendship. I am not by any means the first member of the class of 1971 to get this honor. Mr. Micah Gristy, science teacher, preceded me. He is here in the audience today. Alan Hyatt in law, Sally Stallings, Amos, and Courtney Westcott in music. And those are just the ones that I'm friended to on Facebook. There are many more. I believe I am, however, the first recipient of this honor for research in the fields of science and engineering. And George Pease and I talked about this, and we thought it was really important to pursue this. You know, many of us are concerned about the falling performance of American students in science and engineering. So hopefully this recognition might motivate one or two students to come and ask one of y'all, perhaps, what is this science and engineering thing? How can I do that? What does a career look like? So as Jackie mentioned, George was our teacher in a course called The Problems of the 20th Century, which now, of course, is an ancient history course. But he goaded me, and he got me to break out of the teenage self-absorption thing to think about larger issues. Mr. Elston talked about community. We looked at the whole world as a community. And today when I think about the problems of the 21st century, I sum them up in three words: food, energy, and water. The growing number of human beings on this planet is creating tremendous challenges, and an ever larger number of people have only the most meager quality of life. And science and engineering must be enlisted in order to help solve these shortages. We must also find solutions that do not further stress the earth, the resources, the atmosphere, the oceans, the climate. Because this is the only place we know where living beings don't need a spacesuit to survive. So the complexity of feeding humanity sustainably and providing every person on the planet with enough energy for a decent quality of life, you know, a few lights in the hut, maybe a transistor radio, these are good reasons to encourage today's students to pursue careers in science and engineering. They might be the ones that find the answers. To help them, we teachers must give future scientists and engineers not only process and pattern, but a solid store of technical knowledge drawn out of the fantastic discoveries of science, but also organized in a way that they can remember and understand and integrate it. And we must also give them liberal educations so that their creativity and their inventions come out of a care and love for their fellow human beings. But 98% of the students are not going to become scientists or engineers. So what do we believe about the relevance of science and engineering education to them, to those 98%? To me, it's very clear. Scientific knowledge will enrich their understanding of nature and draw them closer to it. Scientific knowledge is a component, it's a piece of a satisfying life. I can also attest that my scientific understanding has drawn me closer to God. So we shouldn't think of science education just in the practical terms, but also as a gift to our children. by introducing them to natural laws and observations about life, the universe. We give them a connection to beauty and to nature and even to the divine, as well as a deeper understanding of human problems and environmental problems. Thank you again for this honor, and thank you to all the teachers here, whether they're active or retired, for what you have done or are doing for the next generation.